Today on Genesis Does, I've given myself a little bit of a challenge. I'm your host, Mr. MegaManFan, by the way, and the challenge is this. How do I talk about a video game that I respect on a technical level, but that I can't actually recommend you play? Such is the dilemma of Richard Scarry's Busytown. This is a game that's basically not even a game. It's an interactive storybook. That makes sense when you consider that Richard Scarry was an author of children's books, a very prolific author, I might add, over 300 of them in his lifetime, probably the most famous of which is the titular game here, Busytown. What is Busytown? It's a place where anthropomorphic animals live and go about their lives doing the same things that real people do in the human world, so maybe a prototype of BoJack Horseman, except there are no humans interacting with these animals. They are just animals living their lives like humans. As you can see, this game has at times had surges in popularity and price, but the loose copies have only edged up slightly over time to about $8 for a loose copy of the game now. Complete in box, a little more, anywhere from 15 to 20 bucks, sometimes as high as 30 or 40 depending on condition, but I'm not going to go out and buy a copy because, again, this is not a game I can actually recommend playing because the game kind of plays itself. Now, interestingly enough, this game actually makes use of the Sega Genesis mouse, which is a somewhat obscure peripheral. I don't even think I've seen Stop Skeletons from Fighting do it, and they've done the Nintendo 64 mouse, which is arguably more obscure. I'd say if you ranked video game mouse peripherals, it would be the Super Nintendo mouse, the Sega Genesis mouse, the Sony PlayStation mouse, and the Nintendo 64 mouse in that order. You could flip-flop 2 and 3, but 4 would definitely be dead last, but he's never covered it. Derek and Grace have never covered the Sega Genesis mouse, and I have personally never seen one, but this game makes reference to using the mouse frequently, although truth be told, it's not actually required. You can control the game with a standard Sega Genesis controller and a D-pad, but because this game was converted over from a MS-DOS PC game, it has a lot of references to using a mouse that they simply didn't edit out. Instead, when they ported it to the Genesis, they left all those references in and made it compatible with the Sega Genesis mouse peripheral so that if it tells you to use the mouse to move around your helicopter, you actually can if you have it, but if you don't, it works just fine either way. That's what I mean about technical acumen to this game. This game is definitely well crafted, well designed, some good thought put into it, and a good effort comes out of it, but it's barely a game. You could mash one button the entire time. You walk in front of something, you hit the B button. You walk in front of something else, you hit the B button. You don't really even have to think to play this game. Just whenever you see something sparkle, you hit the B button. That's it. There's no more depth to it than that. First, though, let me show off something that impresses me.
Welcome to Busytown. Climb on board the Applecopter and fasten your seatbelts. Move the mouse to pick the playground you want to visit, and click. In the playground, you'll become a Busytown character by simply moving the mouse.
As you can hear from that footage, there is a depth of voice sampling in this game that is unexpected for a Sega Genesis title. Now that does come at a price, because when they ported it from PC to Genesis, they had to cut out a bunch of things that would not fit inside the cartridge. I don't know if removing the voice samples would have freed up enough memory to restore them. That may have been a moot point, but just so you know, Mr. Fix-It, Dr. Diane, The Gas Station, The Seesaw, and Bananas Gorilla have all been cut from this title. So if you want the full experience, you need to play it on a Mac or a PC. And you can because it was remade in 1999, so even if you don't have an old MS-DOS computer like Clint from Lazy Game Reviews, there's a chance you can make it work either on a computer you do own or on an emulator of a computer from the late 90s or early 2000s. Now, as you can see here, I've landed the helicopter on the firehouse, and I'm helping this pig put everything that he needs on the fire truck so that he can go and fight fires. Before he does that, though, he has to go upstairs and take a nap, at which point he gets woken up by the fire alarm, and then he has to put on his raincoat and his helmet and go fight the fire. And that's as close to interactive as the game actually gets, because in that section, you get to drive the fire truck around the map, and when you arrive at the burning building, you take out your trampoline and let people jump into it to save their lives before you move on to raising the fire hose up and shooting into the fire and putting it out. But you can spray the people that you just saved with the fire hose. I'm sure they would be annoyed by that, but you can do it. You can also fire it into the building and put out the fire. So the choice is yours, but choices are definitely limited in this title because it was meant for the very young, as were Richard Scarry's Busytown books. So don't expect to take your fire truck off-road and go anywhere you want. Don't expect to get out your fire hose and spray it all over town. You don't have those kind of options here. It's a very linear progression. You do what it tells you to, where it tells you to, when it tells you to, in the order it tells you to, and your basic ability to do anything is limited to, I can choose which of these storybook adventures that I want to visit, and then I button mash B through the adventure until it is completed. So, what can you say about Richard Scarry's Busytown for Sega Genesis? It is a wonderful achievement of programming. The fact that they could get this much animation, this many voice samples, and this quality of presentation into the limitations of a Sega Genesis cartridge is to be commended by the developers. So much respect to Novotrade for developing it and to Sega for publishing it, and hats off to the individual designers Andres Cesar, probably pronouncing that wrong, and Zoltan Cesar, with music composed by Andres Magyari. This is a very quality effort for everyone, and yet it is not something that you need to own, need to play, unless you are the very youngest of video game players out there. And at that point, I would suspect you're probably not playing Sega Genesis games anyway. You're probably playing stuff on a touchpad or a mobile device of some kind, and not really going to pick up a Sega Genesis controller or mouse to play something like Richard Scarry's Busytown. So the audience for this game disappeared over 25 years ago, and yet it stands as a technical achievement, even if one that's limited in its appeal to the modern day gamer. I'm Mr. MegaManFan. This is Genesis Does, and I hope I've given you an overview of Richard Scarry's Busytown that accurately praises what this game does, while noting that it's really not for me or for most of you. Either way, thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Those things all help the channel grow, and I'll be back next week for another show.
Genesis does. Genesis